Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Yarn Ambassador podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. If you've just stumbled across this, then you're very welcome here. If you've come back, then thank you very much. It's the middle of January so far, and I wanted to update you on some of the things I've been working on and some of my plans. As you may recall, I joined in with Ange from Yarn and Yarn's 12 cast-ons at Christmas. I didn't quite do 12, but I did quite a few, and I've got a couple more planned as well, which I will talk about. But I'm delighted to say that not only did I cast on a lot of stuff, I've actually been casting off as well. And the one that this week I am super chuffed with is a cowl that was designed by my lovely friend Jeanette using Charlie Button yarns. And here is that cowl. So she's used some of my natural dyed minis and for the middle bit, the undyed texel, which is just a beautiful design and has really made those natural dyed minis pop. For my hem, I've used, this is the Charlie Button 2020 vintage, which is a really warm flecked grey. I've called it the 2020 vintage because it was little bits of a lot of the fleeces, different breeds, different colours, and I just threw it into one kind of heady mix, a bit like wine. It's never going to be the same each year, so I've called that my 2020 vintage, and you can get 50 gram skeins of that in the shop, the Yarn and Yarns shop. So I'm absolutely over the moon with that because it's stranded colour work. It's obviously double thickness, so it's really warm. I adapted Jeanette's pattern slightly. She made a slightly wider one, but I like to have a closer fitting cowl. So under her guidance, I just cast on fewer stitches. And I'm really, really pleased with how that's turned out. So thank you, Jeanette. I'm not quite sure when that's going to be published. Jeanette is super busy with like real life work, like proper real life work at the moment. So who knows when she'll have a chance to publish that. But the pattern was great and pretty much ready to go. So I don't think it'll be too long. I'm not sure if she even has a name for it yet. But it was one of those hugely addictive knits, and you just it came off the needles really fast because of that. So I'm absolutely delighted with that. That was one of my cast-ons. And the other thing that I have just finished would have been finished with this earlier had I not had some knitting attacks. So this is, and excuse the ends not being woven in, nor has it been blocked. I'm just going to move this light here and see if you can get a better, there we go, colour representation. So it hasn't been blocked, so you can see it's a little bit lumpy bumpy at the moment. So this is was using some of my hand spun. It was a blend of hand spun that Jenny sent to me because she can't spin with alpaca, and I think the main content of it was alpaca. And the card I found in the package she sent me was this Sarah's Texture Crafts based in Devon. And I have a feeling there were other bits of other things in there, like silk. I think there was some BFL, but there was a kind of browny cream colour, and then there was a warm blush pink, and there was a kind of slaty grey blue. And it's a beautiful pattern. It's called the Gleam Shawl by Lisa Much, who is Northbound Knitting. And it's very simple. It's a DK weight shawl, makes use of these kind of dropped rows and short rows to create a beautiful long crescent, which is just the shape of shawl I really enjoy. However, at a certain stage, I ran out of hand spun, and it was in the middle of a short row section, a symmetrical short row section. So there wasn't a lot I could do to foreshorten it. Fortunately, I had just a little bit of the fibre left. I didn't have any of that blush pink, but I had that slaty grey and the kind of oatmeal-y colour. So I had to put that to one side and do some emergency spinning. And fortunately, the amount I spun up got me to within a very short amount. So that was a lucky escape. So this afternoon, I wanted to show you this before I tried to block it. I think it's probably going to take a while to dry, and I'm not even very sure where I'm going to be able to lay it out to block it. Maybe I'll try and hang it outside. That's worked here with shawls in the past. So I'm really chuffed with this. I have a feeling it's going to grow quite a bit, but it's really cuddly and squishy, and I think I'm going to really love wearing this. And it's another project that I've made using my hand spun, so I'm really pleased about that. And it was a gift from a friend, so I'm really, really chuffed with that project. And I'm afraid to say that because I've been working on those two and I got kind of caught up with them, I've been solely working on those. I wanted to see them through to the finish. I don't know what you're like when you have multiple works in progress going on, but I've decided in January to be a bit more chill with myself and just work on the project that is bringing me the most joy at that moment. And both of those were bringing me lots of joy. I could sit and watch TV and work on them, so they were perfect. And I've got them finished. Amazing. So I haven't done any more work on my Ursa sweater, even though I've really just got 2 short sleeves to do. I might try and do that this afternoon so I can say there's another thing off the needles. One of the big projects that I want to cast on, and I want to cast on before the end of January, was with my hand spun. Another lot of my hand spun. I received a fleece at the beginning of lockdown in March, an unidentified fleece, thanks to some of my neighbours, and spent lockdown, the first lockdown, happily spinning that up, and finished spinning it up during second lockdown. Now we're into third lockdown, and I wanted to cast it on, and I've got enough to make a jumper with, and having done a gauge swatch, which is very unlike me, I've worked out it's a kind of a DK, probably a sport weight, but there was something about it. It was this lovely fawny oatmeal-y colour, and it was a beautiful colour. I just wasn't comfortable with it as an all-over garment for me. It was a bit kind of too pale, and I know in the past from wearing kind of beigey colours, they don't do much for me. They kind of make me just look very ill. And after I mentioned this in the last episode, Ange pointed out a very obvious point, given that I do natural dyeing. Well, why don't you just over dye it? And I was a bit concerned about it because, you know, it's such a precious load, and what if it went wrong, etc. And then I thought, well, come on, I'll give it a go. And it so happened that it coincided with some dyeing materials and techniques that I was trying out that created a beautiful grey. And I thought, oh, grey is my favourite colour. If I can over dye this and make it grey, then maybe it'll spark that passion in me. So I tried out a little bit, and down here you can see that's the original colour, and up here is the grey that came when I tested and did an over dyed one. And then I was super excited, and then I was like, stop everything, this has blown the whole thing wide open. And so I organised myself up to dye up the rest of it. Now, the reason why I generally don't dye big batches is because I don't have the space or the equipment to dye a lot of yarn. So trying to dye 500 grams plus and get them all to be the same was a bit of a challenge. But I have got somewhere with it, and so now I did dye them all. Now, some of them have turned out much more variegated than others, and forgive me, if I turn this off, does that help? Kind of. Light on. Is it better like this? Like this? Who knows? This is not a professional lighting setup. Anyway, so I've now got a ton of slightly greyer yarn than what it was. Some of it doesn't seem to have changed colour much at all, which is interesting. And so now I've definitely got something that's going to be much more variegated. So I was always planning to alternate skeins because I was worried that perhaps my spinning isn't very consistent. So to try and even that out, I was going to alternate skeins. And now, particularly with the dyeing, see on screen it does look handsome grey, which I'm very pleased about. Some bits are still a bit lighter, so what I might have to do is kind of sort it so that I take out the very, very dark bits and I take out the very, very light bits, and so I get something in between. But because we've now altered the colour of it to a colour that I love, it's now, just reopened the whole race of what am I going to cast on with it. And I've actually had a design idea in my head, which I think this will probably lend itself well to. So I'm going to cake these up again. These skeins have now been skeined up, caked up, skeined up, caked up so many times. Feel like I've touched every centimetre of this yarn at least 4 or 5 times. So I'm going to cake it up, and then I might start having a play around with casting on and this new design. Although I am also working on another new design. You'll remember the stag jumper that I'm working on. Still haven't got past the colour work on that yet. Again, I'm quite keen to get past the colour work because then it really is just stocking stitch in the round until you divide for the front and back. So lots of fun plans in process, a couple of cast offs, planned cast on, my other planned cast on, as well as some secret socks that I have kind of started on but haven't really need to knuckle down and do them. The other thing I want to do is create a garland, I don't know what it'd be called, just a hanging decoration of 4 or 5 birds of happiness. It's a really cute little easy pattern, and it's really great for using up small scraps of handspun or little bits of mini skeins that you've got left over. And what I'd like to do is create a garland, whatever you want to call it, for each of my sisters and their families for Easter, because birds are Easter, right? They lay eggs and stuff. So I need to dig out that pattern. I've got kind of piles of little bits of leftover skeins, so that's something to work on as well. I'm very busy dyeing stuff up at the moment. Wanted to get ahead of the game with the Advent dyeing. I probably will have some Advent minis for next year, a mini Advent calendar, mini skein Advent calendar for next year. But as I've only got a limited amount of yarn and a limited amount of time, I thought I'd start on it now. There are going to be very few available, I'm afraid, but I've got the pots bubbling away in the kitchen. And as I mentioned, one of the things I've been working on was a slightly new dye technique that, and some dye substances that has created this grey, this really nice warm grey. And in fact, I've put together a couple of mini trios sets that you'll find in the Yarn and Yarns shop. I'll see if I can put up a picture up here. The first uses this grey, and I think I showed you a kind of a lilac colour last week, that is lilac in some lights but grey in others. So I put a collection of grey together along with some of that vintage 2020 blend, and they all made a really nice collection of three complementing greys. And then I also put together one of those lilacs with a kind of a very snowdroppy green that I have, and just some of the undyed natural, because when I saw them on the table they looked like snowdrops and crocuses, and we have just got the first signs of maybe some shoots coming up after kind of winter hibernation. So I've called that Signs of Spring, and they are also in the shop with Ange as well. And I just wanted to talk very briefly about my natural dyeing. I'm by no means an expert on it. I'm learning lots of things as I go along, and my wonderful friend Jeanette sent me this beautiful book along with a lovely skein of yarn, talking about natural dyes and what you could do with them. And so a lot of those new techniques have been inspired by this book and kind of experimenting, and I've also branched out into planting some plants to help with that. One of which is woad, which is an ancient plant that for millennia I think they have used to as a dye substance, and I think even the ancient Picts used to smear it on their faces before they went into battle as well. I think it would give a little natural high as well, so who knows, maybe we'll try that out. Maybe not. So I've planted some in the garden, we'll just see how that goes. I am not naturally green fingered, but I haven't been able to create a blue yet. Woad is a bit like indigo, it's perhaps not as intense a colour, but how lovely would that be if I could use woad from my garden to dye up some yarn. So that's the thing with natural dyeing, it's kind of a game of patience and chance, and you don't quite know what's coming out. So watch this space, I'll tell you about more things as we go along. This latest grey was using oak galls and an iron bath, which has created this beautiful grey, which I'm really pleased with. So thank you, Jeanette, for helping me get going even further on my natural dyeing journey, and I'll keep you up to date with some of those exciting experiments and adventures. I think I'll sign off for this week. Thank you very much as ever. If you've enjoyed it, give it a like and a thumbs up and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you again in the not too distant future. Thanks for joining me. Take care. Bye bye. So having wound all of these, I'm now going to reskein them using my reskeiner so I can put them in the dye bath. So I think we're at the end of the dyeing process now. I'm going to hike it out and give it a good rinse. It's been resting for a couple of hours in oak galls, and I've just added an iron bath solution to it. But I don't want to leave it in there too long, so I'm going to take it out now and see what we get.